My family blamed me for my brother's crime, so I exposed their dirty secrets on live TV. Some families hide their skeletons in closets. Mine dressed them up for dinner. If you're wondering how this all began, let me take you back to where it started. The night it all broke open, my fingers were trembling, not because I was afraid, but because the silence in our house had grown teeth. Sharp, cruel, lethal. My name is Maria, and for most of my life, I lived in the shadow of a crime I didn't commit. I was 16 when the police showed up at our front door, asking about a robbery gone wrong. Jewelry, cash, one injured clerk. My brother Ethan, the golden boy, the pride of the family, had disappeared that same night. But when he returned days later, clothes torn and alibi paper thin, my parents did what they'd always done: protect him. Only this time, they needed someone else to take the fall. Someone disposable. That someone was me. I still remember the words my mother whispered in my ear that night. "You were always the strong one, Maria. You can handle this. He can't." A confession dressed in guilt-tripping poison. My father didn't say much, just looked at me with hollow eyes, then turned his back. They coached me, coerced me, promised it was temporary, that once the dust settled, they'd tell the truth. But the truth was never part of the plan. I gave a statement they rehearsed with me. I said I was near the scene. I claimed responsibility for a bag Ethan had dumped in our garage. I handed over my life like it was worth less than the lies they fed me. Juvenile court, a suspended sentence, a permanent scar. After that, my life was never the same. School halls turned into cold corridors of whispered accusations. Friends vanished. Teachers looked at me like I was a ticking bomb. But it wasn't the punishment that broke me. It was knowing that my family watched me crumble and did nothing. Worse, they thanked me, with silence, with distance, with smug Sunday dinners where Ethan laughed like nothing had happened. I spent years clawing my way back. I studied hard. I worked 3 jobs. I got into journalism school because I believed truth still mattered somewhere in the world. I told myself I'd never let anyone silence me again. But part of me still clung to the hope that one day they'd apologize, admit it, make it right. That hope died the day I came home to find my father holding court at a family dinner, bragging about Ethan's new tech startup. Ethan was sitting beside him, now clean-shaven, successful, and engaged to a senator's daughter. My mother gushed about the wedding plans, and me. I was the family embarrassment, still working low-level media jobs. Still the girl who took the fall, still the convenient scapegoat. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled, because something inside me snapped into place that night. Not broken, but sharpened. They thought I was done, that I'd stayed quiet out of shame or weakness. But I had a platform now, a network, a voice, and the kind of story that could rip the mask right off their perfect little lives. I started digging, first into Ethan's company finances, then into campaign donations tied to his fiancé's family. I found threads. Then I found the rope, enough rope to strangle their illusions. I wrote every fact, every timeline, every corrupt decision in detail. I called in favors, pulled strings, and then I booked a segment on the station where I now worked, the local affiliate of a national news channel, live, prime time. And this time, it wouldn't be my life on trial. This time, the entire city would hear the truth. And the next time my mother whispered something in my ear, it would be the sound of her own secrets echoing back at her, because I was done being their scapegoat. And I was ready to be their reckoning. I used to think silence was safety, that if I just kept quiet, if I played the obedient daughter, if I smiled through the sting of injustice, maybe one day My family would see me, really see me. But the truth is, silence doesn't earn love. It only feeds the people who benefit from your invisibility. After my brother Liam's trial, where I took the fall for something he did, something horrific, I returned home to a house that should have offered healing. Instead, I was met with stares, whispers, and that old familiar weight. Guilt that was never mine to carry. They said I was lucky to be free. I was lucky they pulled strings to protect me. But nobody asked me how it felt to lie in court. Nobody cared that I cried myself to sleep every night with the shame of a secret that wasn't even mine. My mother, Evelyn, would glide through the house like she was performing on some grand stage. Her pitying glances cut deeper than her words. "It's best we move on," she told me one morning as she folded Liam's laundry with a grace that made me nauseous. My father, Thomas, never looked me in the eye anymore. And Liam, he walked around like a war hero, smirking, basking in the sympathy of relatives who called him troubled and misunderstood. They had cast me in the role of the sacrificial daughter, the one who would do anything for family. But this time, their script was going to burn. One evening, I walked into the living room to find a gathering of friends and family. Champagne glasses clinked, laughter echoed, and there stood Liam in the center, making a speech about redemption and second chances. My mother beamed, tears in her eyes, as if he were some messiah. To Liam, someone toasted, "The strength of this family." My chest tightened. The bile of injustice rose in my throat. That was the moment the curtain fell from my eyes. This wasn't a family. This was a theater, and I was the understudy they never intended to let shine. I slipped out of the room, up to the attic, my sanctuary. It's where I kept my journals, my recordings, and the truth. I had documented everything. Every confession Liam drunkenly made. Every quiet conversation my parents had behind closed doors about covering his tracks. I had their lies on tape, their truths in ink. I stared at the box of tapes, heart pounding. It would be so easy to stay quiet, to keep existing in the shadows. But then, I remembered the look on my aunt's face when she said, "You should be grateful we took you back in." Took me back? Like I was some stray they graciously allowed through their golden gates. That night, I began uploading clips anonymously. Little doses of truth, just enough to stir whispers. A conversation here, a confession there. At first, the comments were mixed. "This can't be real." Sounds like someone trying to get attention. But the seed had been planted. Then came the day I uploaded the tape. The one where Liam, laughing, described exactly what he did. Every single detail, unaware he was being recorded. The internet exploded. Suddenly, Liam wasn't a misunderstood golden boy. He was a fraud, a criminal. And me? I wasn't the broken sister. It's strange how silence can scream louder than any accusation. That morning, my house felt like a crime scene, except the only blood was invisible, smeared across trust and betrayal. My mother tiptoed around me, as if I were some volatile force of nature. Dad buried himself in the newspaper, pretending not to notice the way I watched them. And Adam? My golden boy brother? He acted like nothing had happened, like he hadn't thrown my life under a bus and watched it shatter. The air was thick with unspoken guilt, and yet they wore their denial like second skin. If you're wondering how this all began, let me take you back to where it started. When the cops knocked on our door 2 weeks ago, I was the one in my room, studying for an upcoming job interview. I wasn't expecting chaos to barge in behind a badge and a warrant. They said they had video surveillance, forged signatures, and fraudulent transfers traced back to a laptop registered in my name, and somehow, my family bought it. Or at least, that's what they pretended to do. But I know the truth. They didn't buy it. They planted it. I wasn't just their scapegoat. I was their safety net. And once again, they used me to clean up Adam's mess. I spent 3 nights in a cell. The walls felt like they were closing in on my lungs. But the real suffocation came from the knowledge that my own blood had served me up like a lamb to slaughter. My parents bailed me out, but not before I was paraded in front of neighbors and family friends like some cautionary tale. "Grace, maybe it's time you stop being so dramatic," my mother had said after the hearing. "What matters is that you're home now. No apology, no accountability. Just the same cold script she'd always recited. Adam shines, and Grace survives in the shadows. But I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was calculating. The day I found the burner phone in Adam's drawer was the day everything changed. He was arrogant enough to think he was untouchable. He left behind call logs, screenshots, and encrypted texts that made it painfully clear. He was the one who'd siphoned money from my father's business account, forged client authorizations, and rerouted everything through my credentials. Worse, my parents knew. There were emails between them, backdated, flagged as confidential, but not deleted. They had helped cover it up because Adam was too promising to fail. And me? I was the expendable one. Again, it wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated character assassination. So I did what they never expected. I stayed quiet. I smiled at family dinners. I let them believe I was broken, defeated, licking my wounds in silence. But behind my smile, I was stitching together every thread of their lies. I started documenting everything: the emails, the financial inconsistencies, the footage I recovered from the laptop's recycled bin. I even managed to contact one of Dad's former partners, someone who had been pushed out of the company quietly. Turns out, he had a story too. They say revenge is best served cold. But I wasn't interested in serving it cold. I wanted it broadcasted live. So I reached out to a talk show. Not just any show, but a top-ranking investigative series known for family exposés. I pitched my story anonymously, presented the documents, the timeline, the evidence. They were hooked within a day. They wanted it all, uncut, unfiltered, televised, and I agreed on one condition. I'd be the one to tell it. I wanted the world to see the perfect family for who they really were, to witness my mother's carefully curated grace peel away, to watch my father's stoicism crumble under truth. And Adam, I wanted to see his smugness dissolve into panic. On camera, in the days leading up to the taping, my heart never slowed. But it wasn't fear. It was power humming beneath my ribs. The kind of power you feel when you finally stop begging to be seen and start making them watch. I rehearsed my story like a script, but every line came from a place of raw, lived pain. The producers were stunned by how neatly the puzzle fit together. They planned to air the segment with my identity blurred at first, but I had another idea. "No," I said. "I want them to know it's me. Every lie they told about Grace. When the cameras rolled, I didn't just speak. I exposed. I unfolded a family portrait stained with betrayal and arrogance, and I painted it in front of millions. My family watched from their living room, completely unaware, until the camera cut to me, sitting in that studio chair with fire in my eyes and thunder in my voice. Their masks cracked that night, and mine shattered too, but only to reveal steel beneath it. They say silence is golden, but in my house, silence was a weapon. After the courtroom hearing, when the judge postponed the sentencing because of inconclusive evidence, My family didn't say a word to me. No apology, no glance, no effort to understand. It was as if I had become invisible overnight. And somehow, that hurt more than the humiliation in court. My mother sat at the dining table sipping her tea, reading a magazine, while I stood near the doorway, waiting for someone, anyone, to acknowledge the weight I had carried for weeks. But nothing. Just the sound of my father turning the newspaper page, and the occasional clink of cutlery. My brother, Daniel, the golden child, the real culprit, sat across from me, munching on toast as if he hadn't let his sister nearly go to jail for something he did. My stomach churned with the bitterness of betrayal. Every time he laughed, every time he looked me in the eye with zero remorse, I felt my spine freeze. If only they knew. If only they knew what I had in my hands now. I had gone through Daniel's cloud backup. Late one night, fueled by sleepless rage, I broke into his laptop using the password I had memorized years ago. He was careless, maybe too arrogant to think I would ever look. But I did, and what I found there made my blood run cold. Photos, chats, videos, things he should have never recorded. Not just the hit and run, but other secrets. Secrets that could ruin him, and not just him. Our entire family. My parents had spent years building a reputation in this city. My father, a respected judge. My mother, a philanthropist, and head of 3 charity boards. If the truth got out, their perfect facade would be shredded like paper in a storm. And that's exactly what I was planning. Not just revenge, justice. I could have gone straight to the police. But I didn't want a quiet win. I didn't want Daniel to be handcuffed in some back alley without the world watching. I didn't want my parents to whisper apologies in private and try to sweep the scandal under the rug. No, I wanted them to feel what I felt. Public betrayal, public shame, public exposure. So I reached out to someone from college, Ava Chen, a media anchor, now for a popular daytime talk show. We hadn't spoken in 3 years, but when I told her I had something that would make headlines, her voice sharpened with interest. "You sure you want to go live with this?" she asked, her tone low, almost warning me. "Yes," I replied, without blinking. "I want every single camera on when I speak. I want the whole city to hear what I have to say." The days leading up to the interview were excruciating. I played the script over and over in my head. I could see their faces already, my parents watching in horror, Daniel trying to spin the narrative, friends texting in shock. But I didn't care. What they had done to me went beyond betrayal. They sacrificed me to save their golden son. And now I was going to burn the pedestal they put him on. The night before the live show, I sat in my old childhood bedroom, the walls still decorated with faded posters and trophies I had won over the year. It hit me how long I had been working for their approval, for a seat at a table I never truly belonged to. But that version of me was gone. I wasn't the girl desperate for their praise anymore. I was the woman with the match, and they were sitting on a house soaked in gasoline. When I walked into the studio, the lights blinded me for a moment, but the nerves settled faster than I expected. Ava smiled at me, adjusting her mic. I looked at the camera, took a deep breath, and told myself one last thing before we went live. "You're not doing this for revenge. You're doing this to survive the truth." And when the countdown hit 0, I leaned forward, voice steady, heart sharp as glass. "My name is Maria," I began, "and I was framed by my own family to protect someone they deemed more valuable than me. But today, I take back my voice, and I take back the truth." The host blinked. The producers froze. Viewers across the country leaned forward, and so began the reckoning. The moment I stepped off that live set, A wave of adrenaline surged through me, so violently I had to steady myself against the studio wall. It was done. The truth, once buried under years of staged smiles and polished lies, was now a wildfire dancing across television screens and timelines. My phone vibrated nonstop. Calls from unknown numbers, social media exploding with hashtags, friends from years ago messaging me, in shock, in support, in disbelief. But the message that froze me was from an unknown number. "You've ruined everything. I hope it was worth it." D. My throat tightened. Daniel. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was seething. I walked home through the back streets, hoodie up, sunglasses on, mind racing. What did I just do? I had destroyed the family image, scorched the perfect Blake name, and put myself in the crosshairs of a brother with everything to lose. But I wasn't afraid, because I still had more. The documents I had uploaded to Ava's team weren't the full story. I had given them just enough, just the tip of the iceberg. The real files, the proof of bank fraud, the hush money paid to a girl Daniel hurt in college, the backdoor donations my mother funneled through fake charities to fund her luxury addiction. All that remained untouched in a hard drive, wrapped in a Ziploc bag, hidden beneath a loose floorboard in my apartment. You see, I wasn't naive enough to expose everything at once. Number revenge is a symphony, every note calculated, every silence timed. What aired today was just the overture. The next morning, my parents' estate made the front page of every paper. Judge Blake's daughter exposes family in live TV shocker. Charity queen or fraudster. The truth about Mrs. Blake. Daniel Blake, golden son or criminal. I expected a storm, but what followed was an earthquake. My father was suspended from the bench pending investigation. My mother's charities began severing ties. And Daniel, well, he disappeared from social media, but I knew better. He wasn't gone. He was strategizing. That same evening, I received a call from my Aunt Helen, one of the few relatives who ever saw through the family's facade. "Maria, they're trying to spin it. Your father called in some favors. They're painting you as mentally unstable." I laughed bitterly. Of course, when a woman speaks the truth, the first label they reach for is hysterical. I could almost hear my mother saying it. She's fragile. She's always been dramatic. But they underestimated how much I had changed. I posted a video of my own that night, calm, composed, sitting in the same room they once forced me to write apology letters for things I never did. "Tonight," I said, looking straight into the lens, "my family will say I'm broken. But I'm not broken. I'm finally unshackled." The views skyrocketed. Tens of thousands, then hundreds. People began sharing their own stories in the comments of being silenced, scapegoated, made invisible by the very people who should have protected them. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen. But visibility comes at a price. At 2:14 a.m., someone tried to break into my apartment. They didn't succeed. The new lock I installed last week held strong. But it shook me. Not because I was scared, but because it confirmed something vital. I had rattled the right cage. By morning, reporters camped outside my building. I wore confidence, like armor. I had never looked stronger, even as the city whispered and speculated. And then, the final blow came. Not from me, but from karma, wearing a tailored suit. One of Daniel's former victims, a woman named Marissa, reached out through Ava. She had been too scared to speak, too threatened, too ashamed. But my voice had opened a crack in her silence. 2 days later, she stood before cameras, hand trembling, but voice fierce as steel. I was 19. He thought no one would believe me. But now, I'm done being afraid. Her story broke the internet, and with it, Daniel's future, my mother tried damage control with a press conference. Her face painted in mourning tones. She said, "We are deeply hurt by the false accusations our daughter has made." But no one believed her anymore. The tide had turned. Their empire was crumbling, and I stood alone, but not lonely, because for the first time, I was living in the truth, not beneath it. The media had moved from curiosity to obsession. My name was no longer a whisper. It was a headline, a movement, a war cry. But I didn't feel powerful. I felt weightless, like I was walking across a rope strung over a burning house that used to be my home. I watched my family collapse in public, and yet, deep inside, I still remembered how warm my mother's hand felt on my forehead when I was sick, how my father used to twirl me during Sunday dances in the living room, how Daniel once built me a treehouse with secret compartments when I turned 10. But love doesn't give someone a license to destroy you, and I had finally drawn the line in flames. 3 days after Marissa's interview went viral, the court ordered an official investigation into Daniel's past behavior. My father, once a respected judge, was now being scrutinized for covering up his son's crimes. My mother's charities were suspended indefinitely. Our last name had become synonymous not with elegance or power, but with hypocrisy, corruption, and silence. I received a letter from Daniel. It was handwritten. No threats, just one sentence. "You were supposed to protect us, not annihilate us." I laughed, out loud. The kind of laugh that sounds like heartbreak, dressed up as humor. Protect them. Where were they when I needed protecting? Where were they when Daniel committed that crime? And I, the youngest, the easiest to control, was thrown to the wolves so his record would stay clean. But I didn't tear the letter up. I folded it and placed it inside the same box that held my childhood bracelet. A photograph of my real smile before the silence hardened it. And the first article that called me the girl who shattered her dynasty. That week, Ava and I were invited to a national talk show. Live. Prime time. The entire city watched. The host, sharp-eyed and probing, asked, "Maria, do you regret it?" I looked straight at the camera and said, "I regret staying quiet for so long. I regret giving love to people who treated my truth like poison. But do I regret speaking up? I regret every second I spent letting them rewrite my story with their lies." The studio erupted in applause, but it wasn't the claps that stayed with me. It was the tears in the eyes of an audience member who mouthed, "Thank you." After the show, I was approached by a documentary producer. She wanted to tell my full story, all of it, from being blamed for Daniel's crime to the live TV expose to what came after. For once, my voice would be the narrator, not theirs. But just as one chapter opened, another refused to close. A lawyer called me, one of Daniel's old college acquaintances. Apparently, Daniel was trying to flee the country. A one-way ticket, a fake identity, hush payments to airport security, and my father. He was trying to use his remaining connections to bury what was left of the case. But here's the thing about rot. Once exposed, it spreads faster than anyone expects. I sent the lawyer my final file, the one with the bank records, off-the-books deals, and private emails that detailed hush-money transactions. It was the dagger I had saved for last. 2 days later, Daniel was arrested at the airport. The footage went viral, him being pulled aside at the security gate, a duffel bag in one hand, arrogance in the other. He looked calm until they cuffed him. Then panic flared in his eyes, raw and unfiltered. The perfect sun had finally fallen, and the world didn't pity him. They pitied the girl he tried to erase. My mother called me that night. I didn't pick up, but she left a voicemail. "You've turned our name to dirt, Maria. You've taken everything. Are you happy now?" No, I wasn't happy. Not yet. But I was free. And sometimes freedom is louder than joy. The next morning, I stood in front of my childhood home. Empty now. Its gates locked. Its gardens overgrown. I walked the perimeter slowly, remembering where I once hid after Daniel pushed me down the stairs. How no one believed me then. How they told me I must have tripped. Funny. No one was tripping now. They were falling. Fast. I pulled out a key. The house had been seized by the court as part of the financial fraud investigation. I had special permission to gather some of my belongings, but I wasn't there for old dresses or family albums. I went to the library, pulled out a book of poetry my mother used to quote when she pretended to be kind. Inside, I slipped in a note. "Your silence shaped me, but my voice unmade you." Then I left, not just the house, the past, because revenge wasn't about destruction anymore. It was about reclamation. It wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about the truth, echoing louder than the lies I had been buried under. My silence had once protected them. Now my voice had become the very weapon that dismantled the dynasty they built on broken bones. Mine included. The talk show appearance was just the beginning. What followed was something I had planned quietly for months. A live, televised panel, hosted by one of the nation's most hard-hitting journalists. Viewership in the millions. And the theme, blood doesn't equal loyalty when families destroy their own. They invited me to be the keynote speaker. I didn't hesitate, because if my family once used media to mask their sins, I would use it to unmask them completely. I spent days preparing, not rehearsing, but remembering. Every moment I stayed quiet. Every slap of shame. Every eye roll from my mother when I begged her to believe me. Every time my father's silence was louder than Daniel's crime. Every time they sat me down and made me the scapegoat for what their golden boy had done. But this time, the world would hear it all, uncut. The studio lights were hot, but I was colder than I had ever been, number-focused, armored with my pain, and sharpened by truth. As the host introduced me, a hush fell. People weren't just watching, they were listening, and I had every intention of making every word unforgettable. I took a breath. "Good evening. My name is Maria. I was the daughter they dressed in shame to protect their golden child. I was the lie they told in private and denied in public. Tonight, I'm here not just to speak, but to reclaim my name from their ashes." Gasps. Stillness. Every syllable landed like thunder. I told them about the crime. How Daniel assaulted that girl, and how I was coerced to take the fall, all in the name of family unity. I told them about the emotional blackmail, the threats, the manipulation masked as love. And then I showed them proof, documents, letters, voice recordings, one by one. I peeled the mask off every face that once stood above me with judgment. My father, the respected judge, caught on tape offering hush money. My mother's journal entries, narcissistic scribbles about how I was too emotional to be credible. And Daniel's confession, not to police, but to his friends, who never knew I had access to their group chats. It was a massacre of secrets. But no blood was spilled, just illusions. The audience didn't just react. They rose, standing ovation. The host herself was silent, blinking back disbelief. That night, it wasn't just about me. It was for every woman told to keep the family name clean, every daughter punished for her brother's sins, every survivor forced to sit across from their abuser at the dinner table. I didn't cry, not once, because pain had already taken everything. Now, it was giving me power. And then came the final blow. The host, during closing remarks, handed me a letter. She said it had arrived hours before broadcast. Anonymous, but familiar handwriting. I opened it. It was from my mother. "You've ruined us. Are you proud now, Maria? Was the spotlight worth it?" I looked at the camera and smiled. Not out of joy, but liberation. "No, Mom, the spotlight wasn't worth it, but the truth was." And finally, for once in my life, the truth was louder than your shame. Mic drop, the credits rolled. But for me, that was just the curtain call. In the days that followed, the fallout was nuclear. My father was stripped of his judicial honors. Daniel was charged, reinvestigated, and sentenced to trial with public interest breathing down the court's neck. My mother, once an esteemed figure in elite social circles, was now just a woman with a scarred name and a shattered facade. And me, I was invited to speak at universities, survivor conferences, media ethics forums. I signed a book deal. I wasn't just Maria, the scapegoat. I was Maria, the storm that finally came for the silence. But even in triumph, I didn't forget. I visited Ava one evening, the girl whose pain mirrored mine. I brought her a single white rose, a symbol of peace, something neither of us ever got from our families. She took my hand and whispered, "You didn't just save me. You gave me a voice I never thought I'd earn." And that's when I realized, revenge isn't just about destruction. It's about resurrection. From the ashes of lies, I rebuilt a name, a purpose, a future. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because the people who once silenced me were now silenced by the truth. And I was just getting started. When a family becomes your cage instead of your home, breaking free isn't betrayal, it's survival. If this story stirred something deep inside you, hit that like button, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge, and turn on the bell so you never miss a tale of betrayal, karma, and stunning payback. And remember, sometimes the quietest one at the table holds the loudest truth.